What is CEQA? And if you're dealing with commercial real estate in California, why should you care about CEQA? CEQA is an acronym. It stands for the California Environmental Quality Act. What is CEQA? Here is a simple definition. CEQA is a set of rules requiring government agencies in California to evaluate, disclose, and mitigate the environmental impacts of their decisions. So it is a set of rules designed to protect the environment from government decisions. So it sounds pretty simple, all right? It sounds like a good thing. It'd be good to have governments evaluate how their decisions impact the environment, but with everything related to CEQA, what sounds simple tends to be very complicated. So CEQA is complicated. And it has a complicated history. It started out as a law passed in 1970 in California. It was modeled after what we call NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act. But it has some important differences from NEPA, which we can talk about in a different video. CEQA is what we tend to call, when we speak about the law, it's what we call broad in scope or authority. So CEQA is very broad and far-reaching. It is not narrow and focused. In that way, CEQA tries to protect all aspects of the environment, or most aspects of the environment. So it's not like what we call a single topic environmental protection law, like laws that protect the air or that protect the water or that protect a particular type of habitat. CEQA is broad, multi-topic, and it is defined in California law in the Public Resources Code, Section 2100 to 2104, if you are curious and would like to actually read the law. It is also further defined in the CEQA guidelines, which come from the California Department or Office of Planning and Research, I think, OPR, and is also defined in our common law here in California in our court decisions. So that's what CEQA is in a nutshell, right? You can find some other videos on YouTube that'll tell you all about CEQA, but most of the ones I found were an hour or longer. So there you go. There's a short definition of CEQA. CEQA is a set of rules in California that make the government deal with the environmental impacts of their decisions. So why should you care? If you're involved in California commercial real estate or in land development in California, why do you need to know about CEQA? The first reason is CEQA grants local governments broad authority. So although the law is supposed to deal primarily with government decisions, whether it was the original intent or not, the current reality of CEQA is CEQA touches almost every kind of private land development project in California. And we can talk about why that is in some other videos. But in essence, if you're going to do private real estate development in California, you are going to be subject to some kind of CEQA review, except in a very narrow set of circumstances. So it applies to a lot of private land development projects, and it grants the government broad authority. So that's one reason why you need to know about CEQA. The other reason is it essentially hands the local government agency, the lead agency, a veto over your development project. Now, that's a general rule. There are some limitations there, but what it basically means is if you have to go through what I call the full CEQA process, your local government agency, especially at the staff level, is going to have to be on board with your project. Because if they're not, they're going to kill your project, and they're going to use CEQA to do it. That's one of the reasons why we don't build enough housing in California. CEQA is one of those reasons. The other reason why you need to know about CEQA, if you're involved in California commercial real estate, is CEQA is extremely litigious. What that means is people get sued over CEQA a lot. And actually what happens is people that don't like your project sue the government agency, and usually developers have an obligation to defend the public agency against those lawsuits. Now that might sound okay, but you have to remember when I say the word developer, I could be talking about your aunt or uncle who own a farm and are trying to move a lot line. So it's not, it doesn't, the word developer doesn't always carry the connotation that people think. So CEQA is extremely litigious, and if you have a project, especially in an urban area of California, major urban area, there is a good chance you will be sued under CEQA as part of your project. The other thing that I think even proponents of CEQA will probably admit now that the law has been around for about 50 years is that CEQA is often abused and is taken beyond its original intent, and people use it to just try and stop projects they don't like, whether those projects are good or bad for the environment. So people will use CEQA to do crazy stuff like stop public transit projects or stop windmill projects. So it's gotten pretty ridiculous, and I think even proponents of CEQA will admit that. And CEQA will add some cost and time delay to your development project in California. So if you're not used to that, if you're an out-of-state developer and you're not used to dealing with something like CEQA, it is going to slap you in the face. So even if you don't have to go through what I call the full CEQA process or the full CEQA stack, you're going to spend some money on CEQA. And if you have to go through the whole CEQA stack and do a full EIR, what they call an EIR, an environmental impact report, that is going to add some significant cost to your project. Could have could have 5 or 6 zeros behind it, that number. And it can also delay your project. It could add a year to 2 or 3 years to the time it takes to get your project approved and entitled. So CEQA is really important. If you're doing land development in California, if you're working in commercial real estate transactions. So why am I, a land surveyor, talking to you about CEQA, which is environmental regulations? I am not a biologist, and I am not a professional environmentalist. So why am I talking to you about CEQA? It's not by choice. So CEQA is a pain in my neck. But I have to know about CEQA, and I have to be able to explain CEQA because my clients need help with CEQA. So one of the things I do as a boundary surveyor and a private land planner is I oftentimes help people certainly with the upfront or initial stages of project planning and entitlement, especially smaller projects. And my clients occasionally run into the CEQA gauntlet, and so they need my help with that. So it's something that I've been forced to learn about as part of my work. And CEQA is intimately intertwined or made a part of land development and land use planning in California. So almost any kind of land development we do in California is going to touch on CEQA in one way or another. And a lot of the land use planning that gets done at the local level also involves CEQA, general plan amendments, creating specific plans, doing major rezoning, that kind of thing. A lot of that stuff will trigger CEQA. So if you're a land surveyor or a land planner in California and you're working on a lot of private development projects, you have to know what CEQA is. That's why I, a land surveyor, am talking to you today about CEQA. We're going to do some more videos on CEQA. I think the next video we're going to talk about what is a project under CEQA. That's an important question. But we'll talk a lot more about CEQA in hopefully some short videos. So you folks that are involved in California commercial real estate and land development can get an introduction to CEQA and get a handle on it.